September the 29th, 1974. The bank of the Yukon River in Alaska. There were about 100 men standing around for a dedication ceremony. And before anybody says anything cheerful, they stop and hold a few moments of silence for the men who died getting this thing finished. And then, off to one side, there are 14 trucks, lined up, loaded, waiting to go north. North on a road that did not exist 154 days earlier. 358 miles of gravel, from the Yukon River to Prudhoe Bay, built in 5 months. Through country where nobody lives, to a place where nothing was. I want to tell you about that road, because there are a lot of famous highways in this country, and every single one of them was built to connect towns to other towns. This one wasn't. This one is the only road in America that got built purely so that trucks could go somewhere. No towns to serve, no traffic to carry. Just freight. And before they got it right, they got it spectacularly wrong. Start with why anybody would build a road to nowhere. In 1968, they found oil at Prudhoe Bay. Not a well, a field, the biggest anybody had found in North America. And it was sitting on the Arctic Ocean, at the top of Alaska, with several hundred miles of nothing between it and the nearest road. Now, you can fly men in. You cannot fly in a pipeline. You cannot fly in a drilling rig or a power module the size of a house, or the 10,000 things a permanent operation needs. To get oil out of the top of Alaska, somebody first had to get trucks to the top of Alaska. And in the winter of 1968, the state of Alaska tried to do that in the cheapest possible way. Walter Hickel was the governor. He had opened the North Slope to the oil companies, and now he needed a way in. So starting in November of '68, they built a winter road, about 400 miles of it, from Living Good up toward Prudhoe Bay. They had it through by March of '69, and the way they built it was to push the snow and the brush off the tundra and drive on what was underneath. Now, if you've never been up there, here's the thing about Arctic ground. It is frozen solid all the way down permanently. That's what permafrost means, and what keeps it frozen through the summer is the layer of moss and brush sitting on top of it. That's the insulation. They scraped the insulation off. 400 miles of it. Spring came. The sun came back. The ground underneath started to thaw, and the road they had built turned into a long, muddy ditch full of standing water. In places, what was left of it got described as a canal. By April, it was abandoned. It had lasted 1 season. They still call it the Hickel Highway, which, if your name is Hickel, is not the kind of monument you would have picked. Here's what I take from that. It wasn't stupidity. It was a shortcut, taken by men who did not yet understand the ground they were standing on. And the ground taught them in one spring exactly what it costs to guess. Quick pause. My ebook, Every Mile Was Yours, is for anyone who wants more of these stories to read at their own pace. It's the first link in the description. Now back to the road. So they did it properly, eventually. It took years of legal fighting first, and then it happened all at once. April the 29th, 1974. Work starts. September the 29th, 1974. Finished and dedicated. 154 days. In that time, they built 358 miles of road, 28 feet wide, from the Yukon River to Prudhoe Bay. 5 different contractors working at once. Around 20 permanent bridges. Roughly 3 million labor hours. About 125 million and 32 million cubic yards of gravel. Sit with that number for a second, because it is the whole lesson from the first attempt. They didn't scrape the tundra this time. They buried it. The gravel isn't the road surface. The gravel is insulation. You lay enough rock on top of the permafrost that the summer sun never reaches the ice, and then you drive on the rock. That is why it is gravel to this day, and not asphalt. And that is why the first one melted, and this one didn't. 32 million cubic yards of rock moved into place in 5 months by men and machines a long way from anywhere. And there was one more problem. The Yukon. You cannot ice bridge the Yukon River reliably enough to run a construction program on it, and there was no bridge. Not there. Not anywhere. So they built one. Started in May of '74 and cut the ribbon on the 10th of October, 1975. 2,295 feet long. 30 feet wide. About 200 feet above the water at its highest point. And here's the part I love. The driving surface is wood. Timber laid on a steel deck on top of 2 steel box girders. They have had to replace that deck 4 times. 81, 92, 99, and 2007. Wood. On a bridge. On the only crossing of the Yukon River in the entire state of Alaska. Because up there, wood does something steel and concrete won't. It takes the cold and the movement without cracking. And it does move. That bridge changes length by nearly 2 feet between summer and winter. The whole structure grows and shrinks with the seasons, like a living thing. It carries two things. It carries the road, and it carries the pipeline. They named it after Edward Patton, who ran the pipeline company during construction. So what was all this for? 800 miles of pipeline, 48-inch pipe, 12 pump stations, a tanker terminal at the other end of the state. First pipe went in the ground on the 27th of March, 1975. The final weld was on the 31st of May, 1977. Oil started moving on the 28th of July that year. Total cost, $8 billion. By the autumn of 1975, there were more than 28,000 people working on it. Over the life of the project, more than 70,000 people worked on some part of it. And every pipe, every pump, every module, every generator, every bed, every meal went north up that gravel road. That is what I want you to picture. The pipeline gets the documentaries and the photographs. But before there was a pipeline, there was a road. And before there was a road, there was a truck. And everything you have ever seen a picture of up there arrived on the back of one. Now, the part everybody asks about. In 1976, the wages on that project ran from about $11 an hour up to $18, depending on what you did. Welders were at the top, $18.25. And one Teamster on that job reported making $57,000 in a year. $57,000. In 1976, that is an enormous amount of money, and I have done a whole video about what a dollar was worth back then, so you know I'm not exaggerating it. But look at what it cost him. 70 to 84-hour weeks. Not for a busy month. That was the job. And the other cost. 32 men employed by the pipeline company and its contractors were killed during that project. That is the honest arithmetic of the biggest payday this business has ever seen. The money was real. The hours were inhuman. And 32 families got a phone call. That is why the men at that dedication in '74 stood in silence before anybody cut a ribbon. They already knew. The road is still there, and it still works exactly the way it was designed to. It's 414 miles now, from the Hickel Highway north of Fairbanks, all the way to Dead Horse. It is still mostly gravel. A bit over 120 miles of it is paved, and the rest is what it always was. At Atagun Pass, it goes over the Brooks Range at 4,739 feet. That is the highest highway pass in Alaska, on gravel. With no guardrail worth the name, fuel exists in exactly 3 places on those 414 miles. Mile 56, at the Yukon Bridge, Coldfoot at mile 175, and Dead Horse at the end. That's it. 3. Coldfoot has a population of 34 people. Wiseman has 12. Dead Horse has about 25 people who actually live there, and a few thousand more who are only there to work. And the traffic on it tells you everything. About 160 trucks a day in the summer, and about 250 a day in the winter. More trucks in winter than in summer, on a gravel road above the Arctic Circle. That's because the freight doesn't care what month it is, and because in winter the ground is hard, and the ice roads out to the drill sites are open. Winter is the season up there. Everybody else's worst month is their best one. It didn't open to the public at all until 1981, and then only as far as mile 211. You could not legally drive the whole thing until 1994. 8S/ For 20 years, it was a private industrial road, and the only people on it were working. So here's the thing I keep coming back to. Every famous highway in this country was built to connect people. Route 66 connected towns. The interstates connected cities. Even the worst road you have ever been down goes from somewhere to somewhere. The Haul Road doesn't. There is nothing at the south end but a junction, and there is nothing at the north end but an oil field and the Arctic Ocean. Between them are 34 people at Coldfoot and 12 at Wiseman. It was not built for commerce. It was not built for travel. It was not built for anybody's convenience. It was built because a truck had to get somewhere, and there was no road, so they made one, in 154 days. Out of 32 million cubic yards of rock. That is the only road in America I know of that you can say that about. And it says something about this job that when this country needed to reach the hardest place it owns, the answer wasn't a railway, and it wasn't an airport. It was a road, and a man in a truck. So, have you run it? Because I know some of you have. And if you have, I want the details. What year, what were you hauling, and what went wrong? Because something always does. And for the rest of us who never got up there, What's the loneliest stretch of road you have ever driven? The one where you did the arithmetic on your fuel. Because there was genuinely nothing for a very long way. Everybody's got one. Mine isn't in Alaska, and it still bothers me. If stories from roads like the Hall Road keep calling you back, subscribe to the channel. I'm Dale. Keep the shiny side up, and I'll see you down the road.